Let me ask you a question. Would you extend your trip by a few hours to save yourself $1,000 on airfare? Yeah, me too. And in this video, I'm going to show you how. I fly a lot, like a lot. For work, for the show, of course, and occasionally when I'm let out of the house for pleasure. Pre-pandemic, I was averaging around 75 flights a year. Now I know most people find searching for and booking flights a huge chore, but I actually kind of love doing it. I put a lot of time into my flight searches, not just because I want to get where I'm going for the least amount of money, but because I want to experience new airlines, new airplanes, and new airports. Combine that obsession with my experience working in and around the airline world, and I like to think I know a little bit about booking flights. So I want to share a few of the tools and the tricks that I use that could end up saving you hundreds or even thousands of dollars on your next trip. And if you're new here, welcome. Don't forget to subscribe and check out our city guides while you're at it. There are a lot of flight search tools out there, from the basic and fast to the ultra complex and powerful. I use a variety of them, but I always start with Google Flights, mainly because it's a good balance of power and speed. Now, it doesn't have every airline. One glaring omission, at least on price, is Southwest. Nor do they have every available fare, and we'll talk about why that's important in a minute. But it gives you a good general sense of what's available, when, and for how much. I like that it lets you search multiple airports at once just by typing in a city name. So typing in London, I will see flights from all 5 London airports. And you can search multiple airports at once just by typing in their airport code followed by a comma. You can search up to 5 airports at once doing that, both arriving and departing. And you can pull back and see if changing your dates even slightly will get you a much better fare using the graph and grid tools. And with some Chrome extensions, you can see legroom, otherwise known as seat pitch in the industry, amenities like Wi-Fi, IFE, in-flight entertainment, and carry-on restrictions. There's no point in having a great fare if you can't bring a friggin' bag with you. So it's a great place to start and in many cases, finish your search. Now, a quick note on the prices you see on Google Flights. When you click into a flight, you'll often see a list of providers, including the airline itself, and slightly different prices, but in some cases, vastly different prices. What's the deal with that? Well, OTAs, or online travel agents, distributors and brokers will often buy seats in bulk from airlines. They'll then sell those seats at a fixed price, often at a discount compared to what the airline is offering in real time based on their availability. Now, very often, the difference in price between what the airline is offering and what the OTA is offering is negligible. But sometimes you can find yourself a hell of a bargain. Is it safe to book those bargains? Yeah, for the most part it is. But with all good things in life, there are some caveats. If you book through a third party, and you need to make a change to that booking, you will almost always have to make that change through the same third party that you booked it. Now that is not always a good experience, and believe me, I've had some terrible experience with OTAs. The airline will not be able to help you. It can be an infuriating process. And you might also not get the full frequent flyer benefits you would get if you'd booked directly through the airline. For a lot of people, that's irrelevant. But for some of us, not getting our full allocation of frequent flyer miles or tier points, which allow us to then move towards the higher tiers or status levels in a frequent flyer program, would be infuriating, as well as not receiving your frequent flyer benefits like early boarding, primary check-in, baggage allowance, lounge access, all of those things you might not get. So my advice would generally be, unless the price is significantly cheaper, buy directly through the airline or through one of their partners. Another tool I use is ITA Matrix. Now, ITA have been around for almost 30 years, and they are the backbone for a lot of airline pricing systems. They were bought by Google in 2010, and they power a lot of what is now Google Flights. But ITA Matrix is a standalone tool. Now, it is slow. It is clunky, it is ugly, but it is very powerful. You can find all kinds of weird fares and routes, and it's particularly useful for flying mixed class itineraries. So example, flying out in business class but back in economy. It does take some getting used to, however. You need to type in the fare codes that you're trying to search, which is complicated in and of itself. There's a lot of great YouTube tutorials and blog posts showing you how to do this, but it's definitely not where I would start my flight search. But if you're looking for an itinerary that's a little different or quirky, it is a powerful, powerful tool. It is a rare treat when an episode is sponsored by a product that I actually already use and would talk about anyway. Seriously, that never happens. Mobile games don't count. Now, as I'm sure you can imagine, I am extremely picky when it comes to my luggage. I travel a lot and I cannot have my carry-on throw up all over itself in the security line at some backwater airport in the Yucatan. But I also do not want my luggage to look like I'm transporting live human organs. Seriously, enough with the bulletproof luggage, people. My weapon of choice is the Carl Friedrich Carry-On Pro. It has this tough polycarbonate exterior shell, which means I can throw it around like I usually do with my luggage, but it's also got these lovely leather accents, which kind of class it up a little bit. And if you give them a little bit more money, they will personalize for you. I've done mine, and I would love to hear in the comments what you think the I stands for. It's also got this external hard shell for quick access to things I'll need at the airport, laptop, passports, that kind of thing. And hear that? No, you don't, because those are silent Japanese Hinomoto 360-degree spinner wheels. Silent. If you click on the link below, you'll get 10% off all Carl Friedrich products at carlfriedrich.com. But go quickly because this offer is only good for 1 week. Finally, Expert Flyer. Now, as the name implies, Expert Flyer is aimed at people who fly too much, like me. In fact, if you are a frequent flyer or a member of a frequent flyer program, then this tool, which is a paid service to really make the most of it, will pay for itself almost immediately. Not only can you look at seat maps that sometimes the airline won't show, it will actually differentiate between what is an occupied seat, i.e. one that somebody has picked, versus a blocked seat that the airline has set aside for weight and balance or future allocation. You can then set up an alert so when your favorite seat becomes available, either as allowed and released by the airline or somebody who's occupied it decides to move, you'll get an email so you can go and grab it before anyone else. You can also search for those precious award seats when you want to cash in your frequent flyer miles. And again, you can set up an alert for when they become available and you can go and snipe it before anybody else. And another powerful tool in Expert Flyer is getting crazy detailed fare information. Why is this useful? Well, believe it or not, on a flight with 3 cabins, for example, first, business, and economy, there can be 20 different fare types, or fare buckets as they're known. 20 for just 3 cabins. Airlines have super complicated revenue management systems, and fare buckets allow the same single physical seat on an airplane to have multiple fares and prices associated with it. It's complicated and not worth getting into now. We'd be here all day, but why is this important information? Well, not every fare that you can buy is, for example, upgradable with miles. You can't buy the cheapest economy fare and then expect to be able to use your frequent flyer miles to then upgrade to business class. Airlines just won't let you do that. You have to buy one of the more expensive economy fare buckets to upgrade using miles. And Expert Flyer will show you all of the fare buckets in a single cabin, including the ones that you can upgrade, so you can see if there's availability. So again, it is kind of on the nerdy side, but if you travel even reasonably frequently, it is a super useful tool to have. This stupid rule drives me crazy. If you're not familiar with it, many airlines require passengers to spend a Saturday night in their destination city to get a half-decent fare, especially, but not exclusively, on routes between the US and Europe. Now, this rule is based on the airline's assumption that business travelers are more likely than leisure travelers to want to spend Saturday night at home. So, for example, a business traveler may start their trip on a Monday night and want to return home Friday or Saturday to get the weekend at home. I mean, it seems reasonable, right? Business travelers, the airlines assume, have less flexibility, and so they screw you on price accordingly. Here, look at this. Let's say we want to fly from London to New York, leaving on a Monday and coming back on a Friday, so we can get home for the weekend, hang out with the kids, or go on a bike ride, or whatever it is we want to do. The lowest price for that, £1,200 on United, £1,600 on Delta, £1,700 on British Airways and Virgin. Now, what happens if we include a Saturday night in that trip? It drops by almost 2/3, £344 on British Airways, £382 on the rest. It is such a huge drop just by extending your trip. What this really is an absolute dick move by the airlines. They assume that all big businesses have big travel budgets, and so if you are a business traveler, you have a huge travel budget. What about the hundreds of thousands of small businesses that don't have big travel budgets? Or the leisure traveler like you and me who gets caught up in a rule purposefully designed to screw the consumer? But at least now you know about it, and you can work around it by including a Saturday night in your transatlantic travel plans, or by choosing to fly on one of the growing number of airlines that don't have this stupid rule in the first place. Another weird and archaic fare rule is round trip versus one way. Now, a lot of the time, especially on domestic and regional flights, a one-way ticket costs exactly half of what a round-trip ticket would, as you'd kind of expect. But often, legacy airlines, so the big dogs, assume that the only person who would ever want to buy a one-way ticket is a business traveler, so they price accordingly. Sound familiar? This is most prevalent on long-haul international, but there is a way around it. Check this out. So let's say I need to go from Amsterdam to San Francisco, and I only need to go one way. I got there on a boat. I cashed in frequent flyer miles. It doesn't really matter how I got there. I just need to get home. So Amsterdam to San Francisco, one way in economy on KLM or United, who are the only airlines that do that, $2,855, one way in economy. What happens if I turn that into a round trip though? And it drops by over half. It doesn't matter that I'm never going to take that return leg. I got to where I need to go, and I saved over half of what it would cost me if I'd paid for a single one-way flight. The airline does not lose out because you're not going to check in for that return leg, so they're just going to turn around and sell that seat allocation to somebody at the very last minute and probably make even more money. So if you do need to get somewhere one way, have a look at what a round trip fare would cost by contrast. It may often be orders of magnitude cheaper than a one way. I'm based in London, so that's where I travel out of most. Now, the UK has very high taxes and fees associated with air travel, which, of course, are passed on to us, the traveling public. But it is worth looking to see if flying out of a nearby city could save you some money. Now, let's take a look at an example. Let's say I want to fly from London to LA, and I want to go direct on British Airways, and it's going to cost me, that's not a small amount of money. It's going to cost me, well, thousands, really. So what happens if I look just a little bit further afield? 1 hour, no further than an hour's flight away, Amsterdam, Frankfurt, Dublin. The price drops dramatically. Now, I understand that you have to add on another flight sector to your trip and maybe to even come back. So it may not necessarily be worth the faff. But where it can represent huge value is if you're traveling in the pointy end of the airplane. So you're traveling in premium economy, for feeling ultra bougie, than in business class. So watch what happens if we do the same flights on the same dates, but we, instead of choosing economy, choose business class. The price, $3,325, which is not a bad price to go in business class. Now let's say we go back to just flying out of London. We haven't added in Amsterdam, Frankfurt, and London, and we're just going London direct. $8,400, nearly $5,000 more. Now again, you have to add on that at least one additional sector to your trip, but a 45-minute flight to Amsterdam to then do 12 hours in business class to Singapore is probably worth it. So again, it's worth playing around with. Even domestically or regionally, have a look at the airports within 45 minutes drive of you or an hour flight of you. You may unlock some really great fares when you look at secondary airports in your area. So there you go, some of the arrows in my quiver. There will be a part 2 to this video because there's a lot more that goes into booking flights, but those are the tools and the tricks that I use the most. But if there's a topic or tool you want me to cover, or an airfare myth you want me to bust, or you want me to dive in a little more to something I've covered in this video, let me know in the comments below. And hey, if you're new here, like I said, don't forget to subscribe, check out our travel guides, and until next time guys, safe travels.